The sun of Abagana shone brighter that morning, as though it had sensed something unusual was about to happen. Birds sang on tree branches, children chased each other in the dusty compound of the royal palace, and the villagers whispered that the wind carried the voice of change. For years, the people of Abagana had waited for the day their young prince, Udoka, would return from the land of the white men. He was sent away as a child of 10, a small boy with curious eyes and a heart full of questions. But he was not just any child. He was the hope of the kingdom, the one who would lead them into a new age of wisdom and understanding. When Prince Udoka was 10 years old, his father, King Odenigbo, had said something that shook the elders. A king of this time, he said during a council meeting, must not only know the traditions of his fathers, but also the ways of the world. We cannot continue to live in ignorance when others have gone far. Some of the elders disagreed. They feared the boy would forget his roots if he was sent abroad. But the king stood firm. He wanted his son to be a different kind of ruler, educated, wise, and able to mix tradition with modern ideas. So, one cool morning, young Udoka was dressed in fine clothes and taken to the city where he boarded a plane to America. The boy cried at first, but his father knelt before him and said, "My son, you are not going there to forget home. You are going there to learn what home needs." Those words became the foundation of Udoka's heart as he grew into a man in a strange land. Years passed quickly. Udoka became a man of knowledge, learning about politics, history, business, and leadership. He was tall, handsome, and spoke with confidence. He had seen great cities and met people of all races. He could talk about technology, peace, and progress in a way that made even professors listen. His heart remained humble, though. He remembered Abagana, the little village with the red earth and the sound of drums on moonlit nights. He remembered his father's words about learning for the sake of the people. When he was 30, his father sent him a letter through the royal messenger who visited him every few years. The letter was written in simple words. "My son, it is time to come home. You are now a man. The people must know their future king." But Udoka was troubled. He knew how people behaved when they saw power and wealth. He had seen it in the city and even among his friends abroad. Some people loved money more than truth. Some loved position more than peace. He had met women who smiled only because they saw his fine car and expensive clothes. Deep down, he wanted love, the kind of love that was true, not bought with gold or fame. So he called his parents and shared his plan. "Father, mother," he said, "if I come home as a prince, every woman will want me for what I am, not for who I am. I want to marry a woman who will love me for my heart, not my crown. So I will return home, but not as Prince Udoka. I will come as a nobody, as a drunkard." The king and queen were shocked. "A drunkard?" Queen Ugoeze exclaimed. "Udoka, do you want to bring shame upon our name?" Udoka smiled gently. "No, mother, I want to bring truth to our home. Let me find my wife through her heart. If she can love a man she believes has nothing, she will also love me when she finds out I have everything." The king sat in silence, his eyes full of thought. He finally nodded. "Let it be so. Sometimes a man must look foolish to find wisdom." And so the plan began. When Udoka and his siblings, two beautiful sisters and the younger brother, arrived at the Lagos airport, the royal family gathered in a secret house away from the eyes of the media and curious people. It was a joyful reunion. The king hugged his children tightly, and the queen's eyes were filled with tears of pride. The younger ones had also returned from their schools abroad, each one well-trained and polished. "Look at you all," the king said proudly. "My children have brought light to Abagana." But the family knew that one light must hide its shine for a while. The king didn't want anyone in the village to know their plan. The plan was simple. Everyone would believe the younger son was the crown prince and that his younger brother had something important to do, so he did not return with his siblings, while Udoka would secretly live among the villagers under a new name, Omaliko. A few days later, the royal convoy returned to Abagana. The villagers danced, sang, and blew trumpets to welcome their king, queen, and the prince they thought was the heir. There were goats tied to trees, palm wine flowing freely, and praise singers shouting, "Long live the royal house of Odenigbo." That night, while the drums still echoed in the palace, a stranger appeared at the palace gate. His clothes were dirty, his eyes half closed, and his breath smelt of alcohol. He staggered as he walked, holding a calabash in one hand and a broken guitar in the other. The guards ran out to stop him. "Who are you, and what do you want?" one of the guards barked. The man smiled foolishly and sang in a funny voice, "I am a man who loves the king. Oh, great King Odenigbo, may your days be long. I have come to live in your land. I am not from here, but I wish to sing for you every morning till the sun dies." The guards burst into laughter. They thought he was mad. "You are drunk, old fool," one shouted. But the noise drew the attention of the king himself, who came out with his queen and children. The moment he saw the drunkard, he knew it was Udoka in disguise. His heart almost leapt out of his chest, but he controlled himself. He had to act as though he didn't know the man. "What is going on here?" the king asked in a strong voice. The guards bowed. "Your Majesty, this drunk man says he wants to live in your land and sing for you every morning." The king looked at Udoka with a serious face and asked, "What is your name?" The man bowed low, pretending to lose balance, and said, "My name is Omaliko, Your Majesty. I am not a good man, but my heart is pure. I only need a place to stay and a chance to sing for you." Some of the villagers who gathered around laughed loudly. "Let him go back to where he came from," someone shouted. "Our village does not need another madman." But the king raised his hand for silence. He then turned to the elders who had gathered. "What do you say?" Some of them agreed that the stranger could stay, saying that even a drunkard could have a purpose. Others argued that he would bring shame and laziness to their peaceful community. The argument went on for hours. But finally, King Odenigbo said in a calm but firm voice, "Every soul deserves shelter. Give this man a small house by the old stream. If he truly loves to sing, let him sing. Perhaps his song will bring laughter to our land." The crowd murmured. Some mocked the king's mercy, but others clapped for his wisdom. That night, while the villagers went home to talk about the strange drunkard who dared to beg the king for a house, the royal family secretly smiled among themselves. The king's plan and the prince's disguise had begun. From that day forward, the villagers knew him as Omaliko, the foolish drunkard who sang silly songs and smelled of palm wine. They didn't know that behind the smell of alcohol was the scent of royalty. Behind the foolish smile was a wise heart, and behind the torn shirt was a prince looking for something far greater than power: true love.
Every morning, the people of Abagana woke up to the sound of Omaliko's voice. It was never the kind of song that made sense. He sang of trees, goats, the moon, and sometimes the king's beard. His voice echoed through the red dust paths of the village as he sat in front of the little mud house the king had given him beside the old stream. He always carried his broken guitar, which he played as if it were a royal instrument. "Good morning, Abagana," he would shout after each song. The sun has risen again to smile at the foolish drunk Omaliko. Children loved him because he made them laugh. They would gather around and sing along with his funny words, clapping their small hands in excitement. But the elders frowned each time they passed by him. Some shook their heads in pity, while others whispered that Omaliko had wasted his life on palm wine. By noon, he would stand up, dust his clothes, and walk towards the palace, staggering as though the world was moving under his feet. The guards at the gate had already grown used to him. "Eh, Omaliko again?" one of them would tease. "What do you want today?" Omaliko would grin, pretending to be dizzy. "I have come to cool down the spirit of the king. The sun is too hot, and my song is the water that will cool him." Sometimes the king would allow him to come inside the palace compound to sing his foolish songs. Queen Ogueze would sit quietly, trying to hide her laughter. The younger children of the palace also joined the fun. They all knew it was Prince Udoka in disguise, but they never said a word. When Omaliko finished his singing, the king would nod, pretending to admire him, and give him a few naira notes or food. Other days, when the king was busy, the guards would tell him, "Omaliko, the king is resting. Go and rest too." Then Omaliko would bow dramatically and say, "May the spirit of the king never rest too much, or he would dream of my song." The villagers who didn't know the truth called him foolish, but they couldn't deny that his presence brought laughter to the land. When he wasn't singing, Omaliko would visit the village stream. There, the maidens fetched water, balancing their buckets on their heads as they talked and laughed. He would walk slowly toward them, pretending to be tipsy. "My beautiful sisters," he would shout, "let me help you carry your water before the sun burns your beauty." The maidens would burst into laughter. Some would move away from him quickly, covering their noses. "Omaliko, you smell like rotten palm wine. How can you carry water when you can't even walk straight?" But Omaliko would smile and say, "A man who can carry his shame can carry a bucket of water." Sometimes one or two kind-hearted girls would allow him to carry their buckets, though he pretended to stumble as he walked to make them laugh. The truth was that he wasn't drunk at all. He never was. He only poured little drops of palm wine on his clothes and rinsed his mouth with it so he would smell of alcohol. Once in a while, he took a tiny sip, but he always remained sober. He spent most of his days learning about the people, how they lived, how they worked, and how they treated one another. He wanted to understand what his future subjects faced in their daily lives. He listened to farmers complain about how hard it was to grow yams without good tools. He heard women at the stream talk about how their husbands refused to help at home. He heard young men speak about their dreams to travel to the city. And in all of that, Omaliko saw what his father meant when he said that a king must know his people. One hot afternoon, he went to the village market. He staggered around as usual, greeting everyone in his funny voice. "Good people of Abagana, Omaliko is here to make your market sweet like honey." The traders waved him away, pretending to be angry. "Go away, Omaliko. Don't come near my tomatoes," one woman shouted. "If you fall here, you will break all my calabashes," another added. He smiled and kept walking until he reached the corner where a woman was roasting plantain and beans. The smell was sweet and warm. He bent down, pretending to almost fall into the fire. "Ah! My eyes! The fire of the gods wants to eat Omaliko today," he shouted dramatically. The woman quickly dropped her spoon and rushed to help him. "Are you mad? Can't you see fire? Do you want to burn yourself?" Omaliko looked up at her. She was older than most of the other women around, strong arms, soft eyes, and a kind face. Her name was Mama Chioma, and her roasted plantain stand was one of the most popular in the market. "Thank you, Mama," Omaliko said, pretending to be ashamed. "Sometimes my legs forget that fire is hot." Mama Chioma shook her head but smiled. "You should stop drinking so much. One day, you'll drink until the fire kisses you."
He laughed and bought roasted plantain and beans from her. As he ate, he sang a soft song about women who save fools from fire. Mama Chioma laughed till tears rolled on her cheeks. From that day, Omaliko became her regular customer. Every market day, he came to buy from her, and they talked like old friends. Sometimes he helped her roast the plantain, finding the charcoal fire while she served customers. He even helped her fetch water and carry baskets. People in the market started teasing her. Mama Chioma, are you falling in love with the drunk? They would joke. She always replied, No, I just don't like to see anyone suffer. Even a drunk needs kindness. When he wasn't helping Mama Chioma, Omaliko went back to his usual habits, singing for the king, chatting with children, or offering to work in people's farms for a few coins. But the farmers laughed at him. Omaliko, can you even hold a hoe without falling? They mocked. He would smile and reply, A man who can sing all day has the strength to dig 1,000 holes. They never let him walk, though. To them, he was just a lazy fool. But he didn't mind. Every insult was part of his disguise. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Omaliko's presence became normal in Abagana. People no longer paid much attention to him. The children loved him more, and Mama Chioma treated him like family. One day, as he was helping her arrange plantains at the market, a motorcycle stopped in front of her store. A young lady stepped down, carrying a small bag. She was tall, beautiful, and her smile was bright enough to warm the heart. Her skin was fair and smooth, and her voice gentle. Mama, good afternoon, she greeted. Mama Chioma shouted with joy. Chioma, my daughter, welcome home. Omaliko froze where he stood, holding a bunch of plantains. The name sounded familiar. Chioma. He listened quietly as mother and daughter hugged and talked. Chioma had just finished law school. She had worked hard to pay her school fees, helping her mother with her small business while she studied. She was intelligent, polite, and humble. Though she was now a lawyer, she still helped her mother at the market whenever she returned home. That day, she turned and noticed Omaliko for the first time. Good afternoon, sir, she greeted. Omaliko bowed awkwardly, pretending to lose balance. Ah, the fire savior's daughter. Good afternoon to you too. She smiled. You must be the Omaliko my mother always talks about. He laughed. I don't know if it's good or bad, but I hope she told you that I am a famous singer. Mama Chioma laughed loudly. Singer? He sings nonsense, my daughter. The whole village knows his voice. Chioma giggled softly and Umaliko's heart melted. For the first time, he saw a woman whose eyes did not mock him. She didn't look at him with disgust or pity. Instead, there was kindness and curiosity in her face. As days went by, Chioma and Omaliko became friends. She always greeted him kindly, sometimes offering him food or advising him to stop drinking. You are still young, she told him one afternoon. You can change your life. Alcohol is not good for your health. He smiled, hiding the truth. My dear lawyer, Omaliko is married to palm wine. Is the only woman that loves me. She laughed, shaking her head. Then maybe it's time for you to find a new wife. They spent more time together at the market. Sometimes Omaliko helped her mother carry goods, and Chioma would thank him with a gentle smile that stayed in his heart long after he left. At night, sitting by his window, Omaliko thought about her. She was different. She didn't see him as a fool. She saw a man who could become better. He knew his heart was in trouble. He was beginning to fall in love. And though he was a prince in disguise, for the first time he wished he could truly be just Omaliko, the drunk that Chioma cared for.
The morning sun stretched its golden fingers across Abagana, lighting the roofs, the market, and the dusty paths that led to the stream. Omaliko sat in front of his small house, as he always did, playing his old guitar and humming his slow tune. But this time, His song wasn't foolish or loud. It was soft, almost tender. Anyone listening closely would have heard the quiet sound of love in his voice. Days had turned into months since Chioma returned home from law school, and Omaliko's life had quietly changed. He still pretended to be a drunk, still carried his calabash and staggered a little for the sake of his disguise. But something inside him had sobered up. His thoughts were clearer, his laughter more real, and his songs, though still funny to the villagers, now carried meaning. Every morning, he would walk to the market just to see Chioma and her mother. He helped them fetch water, cut firewood, and arrange the roasted plantains on the charcoal stove. He carried their baskets to the market and helped serve customers, smiling at anyone who mocked him. Mama Chioma was surprised at his sudden dedication. "Omaliko," she said one afternoon, "since when did a drunk become so hard-working?" He laughed and replied, "When he met a woman whose kindness sobered his heart." Mama Chioma chuckled and looked at her daughter, who pretended not to hear. "So it's my daughter who has made you behave like a human being?" Omaliko smiled and said, "Maybe your daughter has poured water on the fire of my foolishness." From that day, Mama Chioma began to see Omaliko differently. She noticed the respect in his voice and the gentleness in his actions. He never insulted anyone, never fought, and always spoke with kindness. She still believed he was poor and maybe a little foolish, but she could tell he had a good heart. Chioma, too, grew fond of him. Whenever customers were few, they would sit together under the shade of a tree and talk. Sometimes she told him stories about her life in school, how hard it was to pay her fees, how some lecturers tried to discourage her, and how she almost dropped out because of hunger. Omaliko listened quietly, deeply moved by her courage. "You have fought like a lion," he told her one day, "but your heart is as soft as a dove's." Chioma laughed, "And you talk like a poet when you are not drunk." "Maybe I drink because my heart is thirsty for truth, and your kindness is the water I've been searching for." She blushed and quickly changed the topic, but her heart beat faster. There was something strange about Omaliko, something she couldn't explain. He was supposed to be a drunk, yet his words were deep and full of wisdom. He looked poor, yet his manners were too refined for a common man. One evening, as the market was closing, rain began to fall suddenly. The traders ran in different directions, covering their goods. Omaliko quickly helped Mama Chioma and Chioma gather their plantains and beans into sacks. He carried the heavy loads on his shoulders through the rain, while Chioma ran beside him, shouting, "You will get wet." He laughed loudly. "The rain is washing away my sins, my dear." By the time they reached Mama Chioma's house, they were both soaked from head to toe. They sat inside, dripping water on the floor. Chioma brought him a towel, and for a moment their eyes met. Something passed between them, something warm and silent. Omaliko smiled gently and said, "If the rain could talk, it would say that love sometimes comes from foolish places." Chioma looked away, her cheeks burning. Days passed, and the friendship between them grew. Whenever Omaliko wasn't at the palace singing his foolish songs, he was at Mama Chioma's stand or house, helping in any way he could. The villagers began to gossip. "How can a fine young woman like Chioma talk to that drunk all the time?" they whispered. "Maybe she's using her law degree to defend madness." But Chioma ignored them. She saw something good in him, something pure. She believed that if he stopped drinking and focused on his life, he could become someone great. One evening, as the market was closing, Omaliko asked quietly, "Chioma, can I ask you something?" Chioma smiled. "You ask too many questions, Omaliko, but go on." "What kind of man would you like to marry?" She looked at the sunset before answering. "I want a man who fears God, who is kind,
and who loves me truly. He doesn't have to be rich, but he must have a good heart. I want peace, not wealth." Maliko's heart trembled. Her words touched him deeply. He smiled faintly and said, "Then I hope such a man finds you soon." Chioma looked at him and said, "And I hope you find peace too, Omaliko. You are not a bad man, just lost." That night, Omaliko couldn't sleep. He sat outside under the moonlight, thinking about her. He realized that he had found what he was looking for. The woman he wanted to marry wasn't a princess or a rich lady. It was Chioma, the humble, hard-working girl who saw beyond his disguise. He knew it was time to reveal the truth. The next morning, the sound of the royal gong echoed across Abagana. The town crier's voice rose above the crowd. "Let all the people of Abagana gather in the palace square. The king has an important announcement." By midday, the palace grounds were full. The villagers whispered among themselves, wondering what the king wanted to say. Some thought it was about the harvest festival. Others thought the king wanted to appoint a new chief. King Odenigbo stepped out, dressed in royal robes, his face calm and serious. Beside him stood Queen Ugweze and their children. The crowd bowed respectfully. "My people," the king began, "for years you have laughed at a man you called Omaliko, the village drunk who sings foolish songs and smells of palm wine. You mocked him, you called him lazy, and you avoided him. But today, I want to tell you the truth about Omaliko." The crowd murmured. Some looked around in confusion. Omaliko himself stood at the edge of the gathering, still wearing his torn shirt and carrying his broken guitar. The king continued, "Omaliko is not who you think he is. He is my son, Prince Udoka of Abagana, heir to this throne." The crowd gasped. Women covered their mouths. Men shouted in disbelief. The guards stepped aside as Omaliko slowly walked to the center of the courtyard. He stood tall, his back straight, and for the first time, he looked every inch a prince. He dropped his calabash and guitar and spoke clearly. "My people, I came back not as a prince, but as a common man. I wanted to know how you live, how you love, and how you treat those who have nothing. I wanted to find a woman who would love me for my heart, not my crown." The crowd fell silent. He turned and looked toward Chioma, who stood beside her mother, speechless. "And I found her," he said softly. "Chioma, you saw good in me when everyone else saw nothing. You spoke to me kindly, you advised me, and you treated me with respect. You gave me the kind of love that cannot be bought." Tears filled Chioma's eyes. She walked slowly toward him, trembling. "You mean you're the prince?" she whispered. He smiled and held her hands. "Yes, I am Prince Udoka, the man you called Omaliko. But to me, you will always be the woman who gave the drunk hope." The crowd erupted in cheers. Some people knelt down begging for forgiveness for the way they had treated him. Mama Chioma covered her face in shock, crying with joy. The king raised his staff and declared, "From this day, let no one call him Omaliko again. He is Prince Udoka, the true heir of Abagana, and soon he shall take a wife." Everyone knew what that meant. The next week, the entire village gathered again, this time for a royal wedding. The palace was filled with music, laughter, and celebration. The same people who once mocked the village drunk now sang his praises. Chioma looked stunning in her simple but elegant gown. When she walked beside Prince Udoka, she still found it hard to believe that the man she once called Omaliko was now her husband. When they exchanged vows, Udoka whispered, "You loved me when I was nothing. Now you will be queen beside me when I am everything." She smiled through her tears and said, "You were never nothing, Udoka. You only hid your crown to find your heart." The crowd cheered as they kissed. And so, the man once known as Omaliko, the village drunk, became the most loved king in Abagana's history. a ruler whose songs of foolishness had turned into songs of wisdom, and whose search for true love had ended with a heart as pure as Chioma's.